Hey friends, I'm Key from Travel Made Personal, and today I'm sharing another quick stop on our Alabama road trips, the Dothan City Cemetery. In my last video, I shared our visit to Landmark Park, which was one of our favorite stops from our Alabama road trips. We actually visited the Dothan City Cemetery twice. On our second trip to Alabama, we had heard of a letterbox hidden at the cemetery, but we weren't able to find it. The second time was on our third trip, and we were looking for some ancestors, but we didn't find them either. Dothan City Cemetery is a fairly large cemetery, and we'd have to spend a good amount of time walking the grounds looking at each grave to find who we were looking for. We will likely go back and keep trying until we find them. We simply didn't have enough time to spend here the first two times. We'll probably do a little research before we go back next time to see if we can find where they are in the cemetery. But there is plenty of history in the cemetery that is worth sharing anyway. Dothan City Cemetery is located at 901 Columbia Highway in Dothan, Alabama. There are somewhere around 5,300 memorials here. The town of Dothan has a rich history, but it wasn't always known as Dothan. It was actually established in 1885 as Poplar Head as a trading community. In the early 1800s, the very first settlers began building their homes around a small spring, which eventually turned into a trading town that was raided several times during the Civil War. But after the Civil War, the town of Poplar Head grew as sawmills and turpentine factories were built. As it grew, a decision was made to turn this area into an actual town, but Alabama already had a Poplar Head town. So the township established on November 10th, 1885 as Dothan, which comes from Genesis 37, verse 17, which states, "For I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" When the railroad arrived to this area, the town grew even more and led to Houston County being created in 1903. The town began to really flourish when scientist Dr. George Washington Carver began experimenting with peanuts and other things. His studies led to peanuts becoming a staple crop for the Dothan area, and due to its rich soil, Dothan promptly became the peanut capital of the world, which is celebrated each year at Dothan's National Peanut Festival. The festival is a big deal to Dothan, and we had the pleasure of visiting during this year's festival. So, as Dothan began developing from a small settlement into a more established town, the need for a municipal burial ground also grew. The Dothan City Cemetery was established in 1885, becoming the final resting place for many of Dothan's earliest settlers, civic leaders, veterans, and everyday citizens, which turned it into a historical landmark. Being very close to downtown Dothan, the cemetery expanded over the years as population increased and contains the graves of Confederate soldiers, World Wars I and II veterans, and prominent local figures who contributed to the development of the city. This includes William Henry Morris, who played an instrumental role in the early development of Dothan by operating one of the first general stores and helping establish key businesses that supported the town's early economy, earning him the title Father of Dothan. Another notable figure resting here is John Jacob Flowers, who was a pioneer of the area who donated some of his land for public use and got involved in civil improvements as Dothan made the transition from a small crossroads community into a city. The cemetery is connected to several key historical events and periods that shaped Dothan and the surrounding Wiregrass region, and serves as a historical witness to many events that deeply affected the community. Being established the same year as Dothan was, in 1885, many of Dothan's early settlers and founders are buried here. These are the folks that helped build the town's first churches, schools, railroads, and businesses. The graves of these people reflect the struggles and triumphs of building a new town in the post-Reconstruction South. While it was established after the Civil War, many Confederate veterans settled in Dothan and wound up being laid to rest here. The Confederate graves reflect the lost cause sentiment, as well as veterans organizations that were active in the late 19th and 20th centuries. Many young men from Dothan were sent overseas during both world wars that either did not return or did return and later died at home in Dothan and were buried here. The veterans sections and gravestones mark Dothan's service members in these global conflicts, representing the loss and sacrifice of local families during these wars. In fact, there is a memorial just across the street from the cemetery that memorializes the veterans of the Wiregrass region. We visited that memorial as well, and I will share that in my next video. The graves of some of the key figures from Dothan's industrial rise, earning the peanut capital of the world title for Dothan, particularly those involved in the timber, turpentine, and peanut industries, as well as business leaders and agricultural pioneers in the cemetery, allow us to reflect on the city's economic transformation. There are also several grave sections and clusters that reflect the yellow fever, influenza, and tuberculosis epidemics that were so prevalent in southern communities in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Dothan City Cemetery also reflects the segregation era, during which African American residents were often buried either in designated sections or nearby cemeteries, with Dothan's notable black residents and veterans being buried mostly in historically segregated areas. The Alabama Historical Commission listed the Dothan City Cemetery on Alabama's Historic Cemetery Register in 2006, helping recognize and preserve the cemetery as a significant historical and cultural value to the state of Alabama. Local historical groups have worked over the years to preserve and document the cemetery, including the Daughters of the American Revolution and the Dothan Landmarks Foundation. These efforts include restoring headstones, improving landscaping, and documenting burials, contributing to keeping the history of the cemetery alive. Still an active burial ground and historical site, the Dothan City Cemetery enjoys visits from local historians, genealogists, and folks like us that are simply trying to trace our family's roots. To highlight Dothan's past and share the stories of people buried here, historical events and walking tours are sometimes offered for visitors. It is also a focal point for local groups including veterans organizations, the DAR, UDC, and civic groups to gather over the decades to honor the dead and mark community remembrance for events like Memorial Day, Confederate Memorial Day, and Veterans Day. As Memorial Day draws near, I think it's a great time to get out and visit your local cemeteries to honor those that have paid the ultimate price for our freedoms. If you happen to be in the Dothan area, be sure to stop by Dothan City Cemetery to visit its pioneers and service members to pay your respects and reflect on the beauty of how our country came to be over the decades. As I prepare the next video on the Wiregrass Veterans Memorial near this cemetery, I will reflect on what we were actually honoring when we visited the memorial, so be sure to stay tuned. Also, be sure to like and subscribe so you'll get notified as those videos get released. But for now, get out there and explore the world your way.